The Lena Park Community Center here in Dorchester is warning our children about the thief of childhood. These kids are hoping that Boston will learn from their mural.
It's all about lead poisoning.
Lead poisoning is a preventable condition that can hurt kids permanently. Sometimes lead can be found in tap water, soil, and even in the air.
But lead paint is the main source of lead poisoning.
Children under age 6 are most at risk. Lead poisoning can rob them of normal development, causing serious damage to their mind and body.
So how do kids get lead poisoning?
Lead can be found in the soil, in the water, and certainly in there are many environmental sources for lead. We are primarily concerned with lead paint because that is found in the home where the children spend majority of their time.
You may be asking yourself, who's at risk for this kind of problem?
Young children are typically exposed to lead particles in household dust or dirt, which could be inside or outside the home, and through normal hand-to-mouth contact, they can then ingest this lead dust or paint chips. A second way, which is less common, is inhaling lead dust.
Children can be exposed to lead simply by playing. A thick carpet can easily store tiny lead particles. While crawling, a child may freely breathe this dangerous lead dust. And some kids have direct access to the most dangerous area of most homes, windows. Window wells and sills collect paint chips and lead dust from the everyday friction of window frames.
When one looks at the dust, what one is looking at is a pulverized lead-based paint chip. And if the child likes to play in the window, stick their hands in the window, and we're not talking about children that put a lot of things in their mouth, just everything that normal children do. They like to put their hands to their mouth. They like to mouth their toys. They like to suck their thumbs or bite their nails. If there's lead dust on their hands, then they're exposing themselves.
Homes built before 1978 typically have some lead paint.
How serious is lead poisoning in Boston?
Well, given the fact that Boston is one of the oldest cities in the country, specific neighborhoods also happen who are the older parts of Boston, such as Roxbury, Mattapan, Dorchester, tend to have homes that were built a long time ago. That some of them are in a substandard, deteriorating fashion, where there's a lot of paint that's peeling and chipping.
And then a parent can just renovate the home, can scrape a banister, can change a wall, can put up a new cabinet, and release dust into the atmosphere which could be inhaled.
Landlords are required by Massachusetts law to have lead paint removed if a child under age 6 lives in the home.
What happens if you're poisoned?
Lead has a lot of toxic effects, and I think it's safe to say that lead affects most organ systems in one way or another. The effects that we worry most about, particularly in young children, are lead's effects on the growing brain, lead's effects on the bones and bone growth, and then lead's effects on the kidneys. I think those three organ systems particularly have an effect that can really be long-lasting.
I'm going to wipe it with alcohol, okay? It's just going to be wet and cold.
Healthcare professionals determine a child's exposure to lead with a simple blood test. In Massachusetts, a child with a blood lead level greater than 20 requires medical treatment. Blood lead levels above 10 are cause for concern, and levels in the 30s and 40s are considered very dangerous.
All set.
A child with high blood lead levels can, in fact, suffer from brain damage, hearing problem, speech problem, and in some cases, if the lead in the body is really high enough, cause death. At medium range levels that are above the acceptable range can potentially cause reading and learning disabilities. For example, we have one of the cases that we came across is a 14-year-old, well-built, appears healthy, tall, yet reading at third grade level and comprehending at a third grade level education.
Before Carlos was treated for lead, he had fits that would last for an hour. He could not stay alone in school when he started school. He tried to kill himself. All that happened before he was tested and before they found out that he had lead. They thought that Carlos's problem was behavior problems. They thought it was the way I raised them. They thought it was his asthma medication. And it got to the point where they wanted to put him away at Mass Mental. And to me, my son was not mentally sick, but they never even thought to check if it was lead. If people think that my child was eating the lead paint, well, they're mistaken. My son is an asthmatic, and lead particle was in the air, and he was breathing it, and that's how he got the lead. At the time when Carlos was tested for lead, I was living at my mother's house. We were overcrowded. My sister was about to have a baby. And I was concerned that later on the baby was going to have lead too.
I was pregnant when I found out this house had lead paint because my nephew had got lead poison. And they told me that when he was born to have a lead test done on him. And at first when he got it done, he didn't have, it was low, but he got all the way up to 17. Hector hasn't had no effects now, and I think it will affect him because I seen my nephew and all the problems he had when they found out he had lead poisoning. He left within a year, and Hector's been here for 2 years. So I think that eventually it will, if we stay in this house, it's gonna get to him. The only reason I'm here is because I have nowhere else to go. And we've been applying for housing, and right now they told us that all we have to do is be patient and wait for an apartment. But it seems like forever. I can't really forget about it. I always have it on my mind because I'm always worrying if Hector's gonna have a problem. Because he might not have a problem today, but tomorrow he could have a problem. Because I see my nephew, his problems, it seemed like they came all of a sudden, just like in one day. I think our landlord just thought that we don't watch our kids, because he said in the beginning when the house came out with lead paint, he said that we should watch our kids, not let them walk around the house and put everything in their mouths. But what he doesn't understand is that you could breathe lead paint in and nobody can stop you from breathing.
Well, I think there should be a group of people, an organization, just like there's MAD, Mother Against Drunk Drivers. Well, there should be Mother Against Kids with Lead.
United Parents Against Lead is a parents organization formed by parents who were at a conference in Washington, D.C., who all have been affected by lead and have children who are affected by lead. And at this conference, we decided that we had a collective goal and we have a mission. And the mission for this organization is to do outreach and education to other parents, to provide support, and to also fight legislatively, do some advocacy to try to get some funding into our communities where it's needed. We found out that our kids were poisoned when they were about a year and a half, just by going to a doctor's appointment for a regular checkup. And we found out that the source of poisoning came from a painted antique like sandbox. And so it wasn't inside the house, it was a sandbox, and the levels were in the 60s and 70s. And back then, in 1982, when my children were poisoned, the levels was 30, was considered high. So that their levels were really high. And now they're considering a 10 level. So you can see how badly my children were poisoned.
Just to see my sons, struggling to do their homework, struggling, trying to try to memorize different things, and it really hurt me, to see them go through that, right. And I mean, wouldn't nobody understand that unless their child
has gone through that. The thing that it affects me in watching my kids is that, you know, I look at them, I look at where they are in school. You know, they're in the 7th grade, but realistically, that's just the grade level. However, mentally, they're probably doing work on the 3rd grade level, if they can do that. And it just bothers me because lead has bothered them from kindergarten.
Everyone's experience is probably different, but for me, it was probably the worst thing that ever happened to me. You know, I wanted to protect my child from anything, any little thing, a mosquito bite or a bee sting. You know, and here is something that happened to him that I probably could have prevented, and I didn't. You know, I took a chance being in that house with him. Justice is almost 1. He was 8 months old when he was found to be lead poisoned. His level was 50 at that time. I was standing in the kitchen. I got a phone call from the doctor, and he told me, and I just started crying. We spent 6 days in the hospital, and I have not been in the house since.
Justice and Ellen have been living with their mom, while Justice's dad, Russell, continues to live in their home in Dorchester.
Before Justice was lead poisoned, or when I found out that he was lead poisoned, I suspected that in an old house there's probably lead paint. I didn't go try to harm my child and put him in a dangerous situation, but I mean, the house needed a lot of work.
As you can see, on this wall, the plaster is not intact. Ages ago, it was painted with lead paint and then skim coated. Now, with the walls and the plaster not intact, it creates a lead hazard, probably throughout the whole house.
You know, he was 8 months old. He was barely crawling for a week. He wasn't walking around putting paint chips in his mouth. He was never near a windowsill. He was barely on the floor. But he still came down with lead poisoning. This is a house that I bought for, you know, short money, but, you know, I was trying to fix it up and make it into a nice place for us all to live. Sure backfired.
$3 million tons of old lead paint line the walls and fixtures of 57 million American homes.
Can lead paint be removed?
Not only can lead paint be removed, it needs to be to create a lead-free environment. We're standing in a containment site where we're actually going to start removing the lead. The abatement process is about to begin in this room at these windows behind me.
Lead paint removal is so dangerous, only specially licensed contractors are permitted to de-lead a home. To remove lead paint properly, full protective suits with respirators must be worn. And wherever there is paint, it could be lead paint.
Lead paint can be found throughout your home, baseboards being a prime example. In this house, not only do we have to replace the window itself, but we have to replace all the trim around the window. Cracked and chipping walls can also be a source of lead paint.
You have to remember that your mom can't remove the lead paint in your house. Your brother can't remove it. Okay, only a certified person has to remove it. Okay? So this is an example, basically.
Deborah George is raising awareness in the classrooms of Lena Park. She's teaching kids of all ages the dangers of lead poisoning and how our best strategy is prevention.
Lead poisoning is a big issue. And the reason why it might not seem as a big problem, pretty much because a lot of people are not aware of the dangers and the effects of lead poisoning. Once they do become aware, in the long run, you can avoid any child from becoming lead poisoning.
Usually affects children under the age of 6 years old.
My goal here at Lena Park is basically to get the children involved and to educate the children about lead poisoning. Children are the ones who are most at risk. And I feel that while children are aware of the potential risks and the potential dangers of lead poisoning, they in return can teach other children. And who better else to teach children but children?
1 in 6 children in America has elevated levels of lead.
Can medicine really help?
There are 3 treatments for lead poisoning, or at least we take a three-pronged approach to the treatment of the lead-poisoned child. First and foremost is to address the environment. If you asked me where the lead came from, I would say in all likelihood it's inside your house. To identify the source of lead and either reduce it or eliminate it entirely. And really you can't go beyond that in treating the child until that issue is addressed. After that is nutrition. We make sure that the child is well nourished, and if there's the need for iron or calcium supplementation, we would provide that. And then finally, the third prong would be medication, what we call chelators, which are drugs that help to eliminate lead from the body. The one thing I can tell you is whatever medicine we give them will be oral. Many, if not most parents who come here, I think have the belief that we'll be able to immediately start treatment on their child and have them fixed, have their lead levels in a safe range in a matter of weeks. They are very surprised to learn that it's not an immediate process and that they will be seeing us from anywhere from 6 months to 2 years. Lead poisoning really is a chronic disease. It's not an ear infection that's treated with 10 days of medication, and it's not strep throat. It's a chronic illness that takes weeks, months, often years to treat.
Approximately 75% of Massachusetts homes have lead paint.
What can parents do to protect their kids?
Parents can reduce the risk of lead poisoning by taking some simple steps toward prevention. First, and most importantly, have your child checked by a healthcare professional. Request a blood lead test and be prepared to ask any questions.
One of my questions was foods that she can eat that would help her, that are high in iron.
Right.
Next, have your home and property checked for lead, especially before doing any renovations. Clean often with trisodium phosphate, known as TSP. This abrasive detergent helps reduce lead dust on windowsills and in window wells. It also works on floors. Be sure to carefully follow the label's instructions. Use cold water for food and drink. Lead solder in older pipes can dissolve into tap water, especially hot water. So use only cold water and run the faucet for several minutes first thing in the morning. Lead levels are higher in water left in pipes overnight. Serve a balanced diet. Foods high in iron and calcium slow down the body's ability to absorb lead. Keep your child's hands clean. Wash them often and keep fingernails short so lead particles can't collect under them. Wash infant teething toys often. Be aware of your child's play area, both indoors and outside. Open windows from the top to safeguard your child from exposed window wells. Taking these simple steps can help protect your child's future.
I think the two most important things for a parent to know about childhood lead poisoning are, one, it can be prevented, and two, that it's essential that your child be monitored.
Ask your landlord, is this place de-leaded? If not, ask him if he can do something about it. Also, if they tell you that your place is de-leaded, ask them to see a certificate of compliance.
You want to make sure that the home, the walls and the surfaces do not have a peeling or chipping paint.
My advice to homeowners is don't try this at home. It's dangerous and you can end up poisoning your children.
Always wash your child's hands. They're constantly putting things in their mouths. You should always wash their toys. Their toys fall on the ground, pick up little minuscule pieces of lead dust, and the toy goes in the mouth.
Whoever hears this should go out and have their house tested before it's too late, because we don't need to have any more children that are poisoned with lead.
For more information about lead paint poisoning, call the Lead Poisoning Prevention Program at 617-534-5966.